Hey friends, curious question for you all. When you listen to these kinds of stories, what pulls you in more? The romance and tension between characters, or the mystery and danger of the world around them? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. It actually helps me shape the next episodes in ways you'll enjoy most. And if you want to catch the next chapters right when they drop, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the bell. It's a small thing, but it helps this little storytelling project grow. Oh, and if you're enjoying the journey so far, don't forget to hit the like button. It tells me you want more of these long, immersive episodes. The village of Thornmere had always been a place of whispers. Narrow lanes coiled between weather-beaten cottages, and smoke from peat fires clung low to the roofs as if even the air preferred to hide. For as long as she could remember, Elowen had walked those lanes like a shadow among the living. Half seen, half tolerated, never truly belonging. Tonight was meant to be different. Tonight her fate would change. She had dreamt of this moment since girlhood. The night her wolf would rise to meet its chosen mate. The night she might finally step out of the margins of Thornmere and into the circle of warmth where others lived without shame. It was supposed to be a promise, a gift from the Silver Mother herself, that no one, however overlooked, would be left without a bond. Elowen's heart beat with that fragile hope as she walked to the firelit clearing on the edge of Hollowmist Woods, where the Stormfang clan gathered beneath the rising moon. Torches burned in a wide ring, their flames dancing on the eager faces of those who waited to witness new bonds. Wolves in their human forms stood shoulder to shoulder, their scents sharp with anticipation. She found herself searching for only one face. Darius. He had been her secret wish for years, broad-shouldered, fierce-eyed, with a presence that made others step back even before he spoke. The thought that fate might give her to him was both terrifying and intoxicating. Perhaps if he knew she was his, the walls she lived behind would crumble at last. When the moment came, when the moon reached its height and the bond's thread shimmered through her chest, Elowen felt it snap taut toward him. Her knees weakened. Her wolf howled in recognition. Every story she'd clung to told her this was salvation. But Darius's gaze, when it landed on her, was not salvation. It was fire doused with disgust. "No," he said, his voice carrying easily over the gathered crowd. "Not her." The silence that followed was worse than laughter. It pressed against her skin like ice. Faces turned. Torches hissed. The bond burned in her chest, raw and unrelenting, but his rejection cut sharper than any blade. "I do not accept," Darius declared, his mouth curling into something cruel. "The Silver Mother must have erred. I will not claim a mate so weak." Elowen wanted to vanish. Her wolf whimpered inside her, wounded beyond words. She could not speak. The truth in her throat was too jagged. All she could do was stand there as the clan looked on, some pitying, some smirking, most simply relieved it was not them. The Stormfang elders did nothing. To challenge a rejection was to challenge the will of the bond itself, and no one dared. By the time Elowen found her legs, the ceremony had already moved on. Another pair stepped into the circle, torches flaring, voices rising again as if her ruin were only a pause in their celebration. She backed away until the trees swallowed her, until the taste of smoke and shame blurred into the damp hush of Hollowmist. Only when she was alone did she let the sobs shake her body. The following days turned to weeks. Thornmere's whispers sharpened into knives. Children sang cruel rhymes when she passed. Women crossed themselves as though her curse might stain their hearths. Men looked away, unwilling to risk pity that could become scorn. She worked when she could, gathering herbs from the woods, patching cloaks for coin, fetching water for elders too frail to carry it themselves. But always there was the same weight, the same shadow, the rejected mate. Even her wolf grew silent, curled small inside her as if afraid of its own voice. One evening, while Elowen was sorting dried roots in the cramped shed she called home, a group of Stormfang warriors passed outside. Their laughter rolled like thunder. She froze, straining to hear. Blackspire Hold, one said, the name thick with reverence and fear. Elowen's pulse quickened. Blackspire Hold, the seat of Alpha Kalen, ruler of the Stormfang clan. She had heard of him, of course. Everyone had. A wolf as relentless as winter. A leader whose word was law sharper than steel. They said he had carved his keep out of the mountain itself, that even the high circle bent their heads when he entered a hall. And now, rumor had it, Kalen was summoning wolves from across the highlands. For what no one knew. Some whispered of war. Others, of sickness in the Alpha's bloodline. Elowen pressed her hands against the rough wood of the table, steadying herself. She had no place among summons, no claim to audience. But a spark flared in her chest all the same, a reckless, dangerous thought. If Thornmere could not hold her, perhaps Blackspire could. Perhaps fate had not finished writing her story. The moon had barely set when Elowen gathered what little she owned. Threadbare cloak. A bundle of dried herbs tied with twine. A flask she had mended twice already. Thornmere had never given her much, and it seemed determined not to let her leave with even that. She slipped from the cottage without farewell. No one would have given it. The village slept as she passed, shutters closed, smoke curling from chimneys that would never again be hers to enter. At the edge of the square, the well's iron bucket clanged softly in the breeze, like a bell tolling her departure. Beyond Thornmere, hollow mist woods waited. The trees loomed tall, their trunks slick with moss, their crowns knitted so tightly the dawn barely touched the forest floor. Fog wove through roots and undergrowth, carrying the scent of damp stone and secrets too old for names. Elowen pulled her cloak tight. Every path in hollow mist was treacherous. Branches clawed at sleeves, roots gaped like hungry mouths. Yet the forest also knew her. She had gathered its herbs, whispered its names, learned which leaves cured fever and which brought sleep. In a way, hollow mist was less cruel than Thornmere. At least its dangers did not pretend to be kindness. Hours blurred. Once, a stag burst from the fog, its antlers crowned in dew, and vanished again like a spirit. Twice, she heard wolves howling, distant but near enough to make her wolf stir with an ache of belonging she dared not indulge. By midday, Elowen found the old hunter's trail leading north. Rumor said it cut toward the mountains where Blackspire Hold rose like a scar against the sky. Each step along it pulled her further from the ashes of rejection, further into uncertainty. Near dusk, she stumbled upon a patrol. 3 Stormfang warriors in the black and silver of the Bloodfang Guard emerged from the mist, blades at their hips, eyes sharp as flint. "Halt!" one barked. His gaze swept over her small bundle, her worn cloak, the hollows beneath her eyes. "State your name." "Elowen of Thornmere," she answered, forcing steadiness into her voice. The tallest sneered. "The rejected one." Her jaw tightened. She did not deny it. To deny was useless. Rejection clung like a brand. Another guard studied her more closely. Alpha Kalen has summoned wolves from every corner. Even the discarded may have use. The first spat into the dirt. Or they'll make good spectacle. Elowen lifted her chin. "Then let me face whatever he decides." The men exchanged glances, amused, perhaps surprised. Then the leader jerked his head. "Bind her. She comes with us." Rough hands seized her arms. Iron cuffs bit into her wrists once more, familiar as a curse. But Elowen kept her gaze forward, fixed on the unseen mountain beyond the trees. If fate meant to chain her, let it chain her to something greater than Thornmere's scorn. The journey with the patrol stretched over 2 relentless days. The Bloodfang Guard drove their captives, Elowen among them, northward along roads that seemed carved from the bones of the earth. Rain lashed the party, then gave way to sleet, then mist that swallowed the horizon until the world was reduced to stone, hoofbeats and breath. Elowen's wrists burned where iron cut into skin. She kept her head down, saving strength, though her wolf stirred uneasily within her. The hollow mist had been cruel, but the mountains rising ahead felt different. Older, harder, as though even the soil remembered battles fought and blood spilled. By the second dusk, the path narrowed to a cliff road. Wind screamed off the gorge, tugging at cloaks and hair. Far below, a river boiled white with snowmelt, hurling itself against rock. The cart creaked with every lurch, and the prisoners, Elowen, a debtor who could not stop shivering, and a poacher caught with stolen traps, kept their silence, bound by more than chains. When the mist broke, Elowen saw it. Blackspire Hold. The fortress rose directly from the mountain, its walls fused with basalt cliffs as though the mountain itself had chosen to become a citadel. Towers clawed at the clouds, black banners snapping, each emblazoned with the silver wolf of Stormfang. Smoke curled from chimneys high above, and watchfires blazed along the battlements. Even from a distance, the keep hummed with power, not merely stone and iron, but will pressed into architecture. The prisoners were herded across a bridge of black stone arched over the roaring river. Archers watched from arrow slits. Their gazes were sharp enough to be felt on the skin. When the cart rattled through the gatehouse, Elowen glimpsed the murder holes above, the chains as thick as a man's thigh, the cold geometry of defenses designed to crush hope before it could rise. Inside, the courtyard thrummed with activity. Wolves in human form trained in the ring, bare-armed despite the cold, moving with precise brutality. Armor clanged from smithies, sparks leaping like fireflies. Horses stamped in their traces, and messengers darted between barracks, their cloaks dark with urgency. No one spared the prisoners more than a glance. In Blackspire, attention was a currency, and none would waste it on the bound. A sergeant with a crooked nose strode forward. His voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Thief, debtor, poacher, cells in the south block. His gaze lingered on Elowen, colder than iron. And this one? She's bound for the hall, the guard captain said. Direct orders. The sergeant's lip curled, but he nodded. Then let the hall have its entertainment. Elowen was separated from the others and marched through an inner archway. She tried to steady her breath, though her heart hammered like a drum. The fortress's corridors were narrow and high, banners of conquered packs hanging like trophies. Torchlight painted the stone in restless orange, and the air smelled of oil, sweat, and something faintly metallic, like coins rubbed too long between fingers. At last they stopped before massive doors bound with iron. Carved wolves snarled along their panels, their eyes set with dark jewels that caught the torchlight. The sergeant leaned close, his breath sour. When the Alpha speaks, you answer. If you raise your eyes without leave, the floor will teach you manners. Elowen nodded once. Her throat was too tight for words. The doors boomed open. Light poured outward, not daylight but something stranger. Within the hall of the eternal flame, fire danced along braziers in steady lines, but the true radiance came from the center, a great tree whose trunk rose through the stone floor as if roots had pierced the keep itself. Its leaves shimmered with pale gold, though some hung wilted, edges browned. The air around it pulsed faintly like a heart's beat. The Sunspire. Elowen knew it before she knew its name. Her wolf surged at the sight, recognition shivering through bone and marrow. It was a living bond, something tied to the Stormfang's lifeblood. And it was failing. Around the tree stood nobles, advisors, warriors of rank, the silver tribunal among them, their robes glinting with woven sigils. At the far end, upon a dais carved directly into the stone, sat the throne. And upon the throne sat Alpha Kalen. He was taller than rumor had painted him. His frame draped in black and silver, the lines of armor catching the firelight with a dull gleam. His hair fell dark to his shoulders, and his eyes, wolf's eyes even in human form, pierced the room with a weight that made others lower theirs instinctively. He did not move when Elowen entered, but the air seemed to bend toward him, the way rivers bend toward the sea. The guards shoved her forward. She stumbled, caught herself, and dropped to her knees before the dais. Her hood still shadowed her face. Silence stretched. Then his voice, low, commanding, unhurried. "Remove the hood." Elowen hesitated. The hood had been her shield since the rejection, since the cruel songs in Thornmere, since the endless stares. To lift it felt like stripping bare before knives. "Now!" The iron in his tone brooked no refusal. Slowly, she raised her hands and pushed the fabric back. A murmur rippled through the hall. A hissed whisper. "The cursed one." Her red-tinged eyes caught the torchlight, betraying her heritage, her wolf, the mark that Thornmere had turned into mockery. Elowen forced herself not to shrink, though shame burned her skin. Kaelin's gaze did not flicker. He studied her as though weighing a blade. "This is the one rejected," an advisor said. "Unworthy of bond." "And yet she stands here," Kaelin replied, his voice calm as winter. His eyes never left Elowen. "Tell me, Thornmere's outcast, why should I not end this spectacle now?" Elowen's heart thundered. She could taste the hall's expectation, the nobles hungering for her ruin, the tribunal ready to dismiss her. If she stayed silent, she was nothing. If she spoke, she risked everything. She lifted her chin. "Because chains brought me here," she said, her voice rough but steady. "But chains will not tell you what I know. I have seen curses. I have walked among roots that feed on hatred. And I see it here. Your Sunspire is dying." Gasps again. The tribunal stiffened. One snarled, "She blasphemes." Kaelin raised a hand. Silence returned. His gaze narrowed, wolf-bright, dangerous. "You see much for one cast aside," he said. "Perhaps too much." The air thickened, every breath a risk. Elowen's knees ached against the stone, but she did not lower her head again. Not before this alpha. Not when something in his gaze told her he was testing more than insolence. The hall waited. Kaelin leaned back on his throne, the firelight sharpening the edges of his jaw. Finally he spoke. "Then prove it. Save what is mine. Fail, and the earth itself will forget your name." The judgment fell like a blade. Elowen bowed her head, not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. For the first time since Darius's rejection, the future cracked open like a door, and through it, she saw both doom and destiny waiting. The words still echoed in her chest long after Kaelin dismissed the court. "Save what is mine. Fail, and the earth itself will forget your name." The guards dragged her from the hall of the eternal flame into corridors lined with banners. Her wrists still bled from the iron cuffs, but her mind whirled faster than the torchlight. She had not died. She had not been silenced. Somehow, she had walked through the storm of gazes and emerged with a thread of purpose in her hands. She was taken not to the dungeons, but to a narrow chamber high in the keep's east wing. Its window was a slit overlooking the jagged ridges of the mountains, wind howling against the stone. A straw pallet, a stool, a basin. Nothing more. Yet to Elowen it was better than the cold mud of Thornmere's outskirts. When the guards left, she pressed her palms to the sill. Far below, Blackspire's courtyard churned with life, warriors sparring in the ring, horses stamping in the stables, messengers darting across flagstones. The keep breathed like a living beast. And at its heart, the Sunspire pulsed faintly, leaves trembling as if under a wind only it could feel. By dawn, a woman arrived. She was tall, her hair streaked with silver though her face bore few lines, her robe stitched with the sigils of the Silver Tribunal. Her eyes swept Elowen like scales measuring weight. "I am Lady Mareth," she said, "advisor to the Alpha. You have made bold claims. Know this. Many here would see you dead rather than let your tongue poison the court. You tread on sacred ground." Elowen bowed her head slightly. Sacred ground is where truth most needs to be spoken. Meritha's lips tightened. You will be watched. Fail once, and you will not live to fail again. She placed a small pouch on the stool. Herbs. You spoke of curses. Let us see if your hands can match your mouth. When Merith left, Elowen untied the pouch. Dried roots, sprigs of wolfsbane, threads of moonfern. Familiar plants, though some she had never seen harvested in such quantities. Her fingers traced them with a reverence she could not help. They were old friends in a world that had offered her few. 2 days later, she was taken back to the hall. This time fewer eyes watched. The Alpha, a handful of tribunal members, and the warriors who stood as living walls. At the base of the Sunspire lay a pallet. Upon it, a girl no older than 14. Her skin was pale as ash, her lips blue at the corners. Around her eyes, faint bruising spread like ink. She shivered though braziers roared nearby. My sister, Kaelin said from the dais. His voice was even, but it carried an edge like unsheathed steel. One of 6. All stricken. Each night they dance. Though doors remain locked and guards swear by their lives no intruder passes. At dawn they are found thus, exhausted, dying by inches. Tell me, Thornmere's outcast, what do you see? Elowen's breath caught. She approached slowly, kneeling by the girl. The scent of sweat and something metallic clung to her skin, the same tang she had noticed around the Sunspire itself. She laid her hand lightly on the girl's arm. Heat pulsed beneath, irregular, like a drum stumbling in its rhythm. Her wolf stirred. Elowen closed her eyes, letting instinct guide where reason faltered. Beneath skin, beneath bone, something tugged. Threads like cobwebs binding the girl not to her own body, but elsewhere. A seam she realized leading into shadow. She is tethered, Elowen whispered. As if part of her walks beyond this hall while her body lies here. Something feeds upon that tether, drains her strength. Words, muttered a tribunal elder. Superstition. Kaelin's eyes sharpened. How would you sever it? Elowen hesitated. If she spoke wrong, they would dismiss her as a fraud, perhaps worse. But silence would bury her faster. Herbs to steady her spirit, she said slowly. Moonfern to ease the pull, wolfsbane to confuse whatever gnaws at her. But more than that, I must see where the tether leads. Alone I cannot. Murmurs rose. Dangerous talk. Meritha's face was unreadable. Kaelin leaned forward on his throne. And if you fail, then let your guards strike me down, Elowen said, surprising even herself with the steadiness in her voice. Better that than do nothing. Silence stretched. Then Kaelin's lips curved. Not a smile, but the barest acknowledgement of courage. Very well. You will try. But know this. Every breath of my sisters is a measure of your worth. Fail, and Thornmere will seem a mercy. That night, Elowen worked by torchlight in the small chamber they gave her. The herbs spread across the table, steam rising from a clay pot she had begged from the kitchens. She crushed leaves, whispered old words under her breath. Not spells, but the songs her mother once hummed, tunes that calmed the wolf within. Sleep tugged at her eyes, but she did not yield. She could not. For the first time in years, her life carried weight beyond her own survival. Near midnight, a sound stirred the corridor outside. Heavy boots, a knock at the door. When it opened, Kaelin himself entered. No guards, no tribunal. Just the Alpha. His presence filling the narrow room like a storm cloud. Elowen stiffened. My lord. His gaze swept the herbs, the steaming pot, then her. Marith reports you speak as though you have known curses all your life. Elowen met his eyes despite the warning in her memory. Curses, and I have walked the same road, Alpha. Different steps, same stones. For a moment silence reigned. Then Kaelin stepped closer, the shadows bending around him. If you lie, if you grasp for power you cannot hold, you doom not only yourself but all I rule. I know, Elowen said softly. And yet you still came to see for yourself. His eyes flickered. Not surprise, not approval, but something sharper. Curiosity, perhaps. Or the faintest glint of respect. He turned toward the door. Dawn will tell whether you live another day. Elowen of Thornmere. Do not waste it. When he was gone, Elowen pressed trembling hands to the table. She had spoken boldly, perhaps foolishly, but her chest thrummed with something she had not felt since before Darius's rejection. Not hope, not yet, but the first stirring of it. The dawn broke pale and cold over Blackspire Hold, its light spilling into the hall of the eternal flame like water on stone. The torches still guttered, and the Sunspire's leaves stirred faintly as if sighing in restless sleep. Elowen stood at the base of the great tree, her bundle of herbs in hand, her heart a hammer behind her ribs. Before her lay the same young girl she had seen the night before. Kaelin's sister, trembling in fever's grip, her breaths shallow, her lips cracked. The tribunal watched from the shadows of the hall, their robes whispering like wings of crows. Warriors of the Bloodfang Guard lined the walls, their hands near hilts, eyes hard. And on the dais, Alpha Kaelin sat, his gaze unblinking, every line of his body taut with control. Elowen forced herself to breathe slowly. Fear would betray her faster than failure. She knelt by the girl and began her work. From her pouch, she drew moonfern and crushed it in her palm, its scent sharp and clean. She mixed it with water warmed over the brazier, stirring until the steam curled upward in soft spirals. Then she lifted the cup to the girl's lips. Slowly, Elowen whispered. Only a little. The girl swallowed, grimacing. For heartbeat nothing changed. Then her body eased fractionally, her trembling less violent. A murmur ran through the hall, surprise, suspicion. Elowen continued, laying wolfsbane at the girl's temples in small, measured amounts. Its bitter odor drew wrinkled noses from the tribunal, but she ignored them. She pressed her hand gently to the girl's brow, feeling the tug of that unseen tether. The seam was still there, stretching outward like a rope tied to shadows. She closed her eyes and let her wolf rise within her, not shifting but lending its senses. The seam glowed faintly in her mind's eye, a thread leading somewhere she could not yet follow. There, she murmured. Something pulls at her. Not fever. Not illness. A hunger. One of the tribunal elders hissed. Blasphemy. She toys with tricks. Kaelin's voice cut across them like a blade. Silence. Let her finish. The authority in his tone made the air tremble. Even the tribunal obeyed, their protests swallowed. Elowen opened her eyes, sweat beading at her temples. She sprinkled powdered yarrow across the girl's chest, whispering the lullabies her mother once sang, the only words that had ever calmed her wolf. The herbs glowed faintly in the brazier's light, a shimmer of green gold against pale skin. The girl's breathing steadied, not healed, not whole, but steadier. Her lips lost some of their blue. Gasps echoed through the hall. The tribunal exchanged sharp glances. One muttered, "Impossible." Elowen sagged back, drained but unbroken. She looked up, meeting Kaelin's eyes. He did not smile. He did not move. But something shifted in his gaze, subtle as a shadow leaning closer to flame. At last he spoke. She lives another day because of you. Do not let it be her last. The tribunal murmured in discontent. One stepped forward, voice heavy with disdain. Alpha, this is folly. She's cursed. Rejected. To trust her is to invite ruin. Kaelin's gaze snapped to the elder. And yet she succeeded where your prayers and potions failed. His voice rang like iron striking stone. Unless you would rather my sister die to preserve your pride. Silence. The elder bowed stiffly and stepped back. Kaelin rose, descending the dais with slow, deliberate steps until he stood before Elowen. The hall seemed to shrink around his presence. "You bought her time," he said. "Now earn the rest. You will tend them all, each of my sisters, until the curse is broken or you are." His words left no room for refusal. Elowen bowed her head, her voice rough. "I will try." Kaelin studied her for a long moment, then turned away. "See that you do." As he strode back to the dais, the tribunal whispered among themselves, anger simmering like coals. But Elowen heard something else beneath their discontent. Fear. Not of her. Not yet. Of what she might uncover. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of trial and tension. Elowen rose with the clang of the morning bell, ate little more than coarse bread, and descended into the hall where the sunspire glowed faintly above the pallets of the Alpha sisters. There were 6 in all, each stricken in the same cruel way. Bodies drained, spirits tethered elsewhere. The youngest still shivered with fever's grip, her breaths shallow, while the eldest lay silent, as if stone had stolen her voice. Between them, 4 others drifted in and out of waking, their eyes glazed with exhaustion no sleep could mend. Elowen tended them with what herbs she knew, what instincts her wolf whispered. She burned moonfern to mask the seams of shadow, placed wolfsbane at their temples, sang lullabies long forgotten in Thornmere. Sometimes the tether slackened, sometimes it fought back, snapping tight like a rope in angry hands. The tribunal watched always. They stood at the edges of the hall, robes heavy with sigils, eyes narrowed, lips pursed as if measuring each breath Elowen drew. Lady Meritha's face remained unreadable, but others sneered openly, muttering witch and cursed whenever Kaelin's gaze was elsewhere. One morning, when Elowen laid her hand upon the 3rd sister's brow and whispered the lullaby, a shadow coiled at her fingertips, cold, slick, alive. She jerked back, biting her lip to smother a gasp. The tribunal seized upon it instantly. "See how the curse bends to her," an elder snapped. "She is its kin, not its cure." Kaelin, seated on his throne, raised a single hand. The hall fell silent. His eyes found Elowen's, sharp as a wolf's in winter dark. "What did you feel?" Her throat was dry. If she admitted fear, they would claim her weakness. If she lied, Kaelin would know. "A thread," she said finally. "Something that binds them beyond this hall. It resists, but it can be touched. Which means it can be cut." Gasps, scoffs, mutters. Kaelin did not flinch. "Then cut it." Elowen swallowed. "Not yet. To cut blindly is to sever flesh as well as rope. I must follow where it leads." The tribunal erupted, voices overlapping like crows. Kaelin's voice cut through, iron and final. "Enough. She speaks and works until I command otherwise. If her hands falter, her life is mine to take. Not yours." The hall fell into a grudging silence. Elowen bowed her head, not in fear, but in acknowledgement of the protection she had been given, thin as a blade's edge though it was. By the 3rd week, whispers ran through Blackspire like rats through grain stores. Servants spoke of the outcast who dared touch the Alpha sisters. Warriors muttered of her eyes, red-tinged and strange, claiming they glowed in torchlight. Children pointed when she passed, hiding behind their mothers' skirts. And yet, some looked at her differently. The cook who gave her an extra ladle of broth when no one watched. The stable boy who whispered, "She breathes easier now," after seeing one of the sisters smile faintly in her sleep. Even in a fortress of stone, kindness found cracks. Still danger thickened. Twice, Elowen returned to her chamber to find the door ajar. Her herbs scattered across the floor. Once, a rat lay dead upon her pallet, its belly slit, the word curse scrawled above in soot. She gathered the herbs silently, heart pounding. Whoever hated her enough to break into her room wanted her gone, but not by open challenge. Not yet. One evening, after hours of tending the sisters, Elowen stepped into the courtyard to breathe. The air was knife cold, the sky a vault of iron. Warriors trained by torchlight, their movements precise, brutal, unrelenting. Kaelan stood among them, stripped of cloak and armor, a sword in his hand. He moved with lethal grace, each strike a statement of authority. When his opponent stumbled, Kaelan pressed him hard, then stepped back, leaving the man gasping but alive. Elowen watched from the shadows, unseen she hoped. But Kaelan's eyes found her, even through distance and dark. He said nothing, only inclined his head once before turning away. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible. Yet it struck deeper than words. It was acknowledgement, not of worth yet, but of presence. Later that night, Kaelan came to her chamber. No guards, no tribunal. Only the Alpha, filling the narrow space with his silence. "You are watched," he said. "Every step you take is weighed. They would see you fall." "I know," Elowen whispered. He studied her a long time, then asked, "Why do you stay?" Elowen's throat tightened. She could have spoken of duty, of bargains, of fear. Instead she said, "Because if I leave, the tether wins. And I will not let hatred write the end of these girls." For a moment something flickered in his gaze. Not warmth, not yet, but the faintest ember of trust. "Then do not fail them," Kaelan said. And he left her to the night. The tether haunted Elowen's thoughts. By day she tended the Alpha's sisters, herbs staining her fingers, lullabies rasping her throat. By night she lay on her straw pallet, staring at the ceiling while the unseen rope thrummed in her chest like a distant drum. It never loosened. It never slept. At first, she thought it a trick of her mind, fear reshaped into vision. But each time she touched the sisters, each time her wolf rose to meet the seam, she felt it pulling, always in the same direction. Not outward toward hollow mist. Not upward to the stars. Into the mountain itself. The tribunal's eyes grew sharper with every improvement in the sisters' health. By the second week, 2 of the girls could sit upright with Elowen's help. Their cheeks had regained color, their voices fragile but audible. One whispered thank you with trembling lips before drifting back into uneasy sleep. That single word nearly unraveled Elowen. It had been years since anyone had thanked her without mockery knotted behind the syllables. The tribunal saw only danger. "She weaves her curse into them," an elder muttered. "See how their eyes cloud with her touch." Kaelan's voice silenced him, iron without raising volume. "See how their hearts beat when they did not before." But suspicion had teeth. One evening, when Elowen returned to her chamber, she found her herbs overturned, her cloak slashed, her water jug shattered. Ash scrawled across the wall spelled a single word: witch. She sank onto the pallet, gripping the ruined cloak until her knuckles ached. Thornmere had followed her after all. On the 3rd week, the tether's pull became unbearable. During the youngest sister's fever, Elowen pressed her palm to the girl's chest and felt it like a chain tugging straight through the stone beneath their feet. She whispered without thinking, "It's here. Below us." The tribunal hissed with outrage. But Kaelan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Explain." "There is something under this fortress," Elowen said, forcing her voice steady. "It drinks their strength. Perhaps it drinks from the Sunspire itself. The seam runs downward. I can feel it in every breath." "You speak of shadows," an elder sneered. "There is nothing beneath these walls but bedrock." Kaelan rose from the throne. The hall fell silent at the scrape of his boots on stone. Bedrock can be tunneled. Secrets can be buried. If she feels a pull, we follow it. The tribunal sputtered. "Alpha, this is folly." His glare silenced them. "Your pride has failed my sisters. Her touch has not. We go." That night, torches flared in the lower corridors. Kaelin led a small party. Himself, 2 Bloodfawn guards, Lady Marith, and Elowen with her wrists unshackled but watched. The air grew colder as they descended stair after stair. The fortress changed the deeper they went. Walls grew damp, stones rough-hewn instead of polished. Cobwebs draped corners, and the torches hissed with every drip from the ceiling. Rats skittered along ledges, their eyes bright in the flicker. Elowen's chest tightened with each step. The tether hummed louder, a living cord stretched taut. Her wolf strained against her skin, for bristling inside her veins. At last they reached a sealed archway of stone. Old carvings scarred its face, sigils half erased by time. Elowen pressed her hand to it. The tether flared, hot and cold at once, searing her palm. "It's here," she whispered. "Something waits." One of the guards shifted uneasily. "Alpha, this wall is older than the keep. It was never meant to be opened." Kaelin's gaze was unyielding. "Stone is only silence until will makes it speak. Break it." The guards swung picks and hammers. Sparks flew. Dust choked the air. At last a crack split the archway, groaning as if the mountain itself objected. When it fell open, a rush of stale air poured out, reeking of metal and rot. Torchlight revealed a tunnel descending steeply into blackness. Elowen staggered as the tether yanked her forward. For a heartbeat, she thought she heard voices, thin, mocking, almost human. The same chant from Thornmere's children, twisting through memory. Red eyes, red eyes. Her knees threatened to give. Kaelin's hand shot out, steadying her by the arm. His grip was firm, grounding, hot against her skin. "Stand," he said quietly, for her ears alone. She lifted her chin, breath ragged but defiant. "I'm not afraid." His eyes searched hers, unreadable. Then he released her. "Good. Because what waits below does not fear you either." They descended into the dark. The tunnel wound deeper than she thought possible, its walls rough with claw marks, not from picks, but from something that had dug itself upward long ago. Symbols burned faintly on the stone, old runes that pulsed when the torchlight passed. At the bottom lay a cavern. The air shimmered with a metallic tang so thick it stung the throat. In the center yawned a pit, narrow but bottomless, from which exhaled a slow, steady breath. Elowen's wolf howled inside her chest. The tether leapt, plunging into the pit like a chain into water. She could feel the sisters tied here, their strength leaking drop by drop into whatever lurked below. "This is it," she whispered, voice shaking despite herself. "The seam. The root of it." Kaelin stepped beside her. His profile cut sharp against the torchlight. "Then this is where we break it." Lady Marith's face was pale, her composure strained. The tribunal would rage when they heard. Perhaps they already knew. Perhaps they had always known. Elowen crouched at the pit's edge, placing wolfsbane in a ring, her hands trembling. She could not yet cut the tether, but she could mark it, weaken its grip. Words spilled from her lips, the same lullabies twisted into defiance. The herbs smoked, glowing faint green. The pit shuddered. A sound rose, low and guttural, like a growl scraped across stone. The guard stumbled back. Kaelin's sword flashed free, steel gleaming. He stepped between Elowen and the pit, every line of him taut, unflinching. "Elowen," he said without looking back. "What does it want?" Her wolf pressed against her ribs, desperate, terrified. She swallowed hard. "Us," she said. "It wants us all." The cavern's echo lingered in Elowen's ears long after they sealed the pit again. That guttural growl had clawed into her bones, rattling in her marrow as though it belonged not only to the mountain but to her own blood. Even now, back in the corridors of Blackspire, she swore she heard it breathing. The guards whispered behind their gauntlets as they marched, torches guttering in the damp. One crossed himself in the old way, muttering a prayer to the Moon Mother. Another kept glancing over his shoulder as if expecting claws to drag them back into the dark. Kaelin walked ahead, unhurried, his sword still unsheathed. He moved with the calm of one who did not fear the dark because he had long since claimed it as his own. Lady Marith trailed behind him, her lips drawn thin, her silence sharper than any protest. Elowen said nothing. She pressed her fists into her cloak to keep them from shaking. When they reached the upper halls, the tribunal was waiting. Robes swayed like storm clouds, eyes flashing with outrage. The eldest elder stepped forward, jabbing a gnarled finger toward Elowen. "This is her doing. She led you into shadows. She unearths what should remain buried." Kaelin's gaze snapped to him, colder than the mountain wind. "She revealed what you chose not to see." Gasps rippled through the tribunal ranks. Meritha's silence was a blade between them all. Elowen lowered her eyes. To stand here at the heart of power, smeared with dust from the caverns, was to balance on the thinnest edge. One wrong word, and she would tumble into the abyss they all whispered about. Another elder sneered. "She speaks of tethers and seems as if curses were ropes to be severed. Folly. Witchcraft." Kaelin stepped forward, his presence filling the hall. "And yet my sisters breathe stronger each dawn she touches them. If this is witchcraft, then I will have more of it." The words rang like steel against stone. Silence followed, taut and dangerous. At last Marith spoke. "Alpha, her methods skirt the line of blasphemy. But results cannot be denied. Perhaps." Her gaze slid to Elowen, unreadable. "We must let her walk this line a while longer." Kaelin's jaw clenched. "She walks it under my command. No one else's." Elowen's chest tightened at his words. Protection, yes, but also pressure heavier than iron chains. That night, she returned to her chamber with a guard at her door. She sank onto her pallet, exhausted. The herbs were scattered again. Someone had searched them in her absence. A fresh cut marred the tabletop, deep and deliberate. The wolf inside her bristled. Whoever sought her downfall would not strike openly. Not yet. She gathered the herbs carefully, murmuring to herself, the old words her mother had whispered once. "A wound is a story. A scar is its truth." Her wolf pressed close, restless. Elowen lifted her gaze to the narrow window. Beyond it, the mountain stars burned sharp and cold. Somewhere beneath them, 6 girls fought for breath. Somewhere beneath that, a pit breathed hunger. And between them all herself. The next morning, Kaelin summoned her to the courtyard. Warriors ringed the training ground, their swords flashing in winter light. Elowen felt every eye as she crossed the stones, her cloak dragging in the frost. Kaelin stood at the center, blade in hand, his breath steaming. He beckoned her forward. "You speak of cutting threads," he said. "Then show me your strength." A wooden staff was thrust into her hands. Rough, heavy, splintering. She stared at it, then at him. "I am no warrior," she said. "You claim to fight shadows," Kaelin replied. His eyes glinted like ice under sun. "Prove you can stand against flesh." The warriors muttered approval, hungry to see her falter. Elowen's grip tightened on the staff. Fear gnawed at her ribs, but deeper than fear burned something sharper. Defiance. Kaelin struck first, not with killing force but with testing speed. The clash of wood and steel rang through the courtyard. Pain jolted up her arms. She staggered but did not fall. "Again," he said. Blow after blow, he pressed her. Her palms blistered, her shoulders screamed, but each time she lifted the staff again. The wolf inside her rose with every strike, lending her speed, lending her stubborn fire. At last, Kaelin halted. His sword hovered at her throat, close enough that a breath could cut. The courtyard held its silence. Kaelin lowered his blade. "She does not fall." A murmur rippled through the warriors. Not approval, not yet, but something that sounded less like scorn. Elowen's chest heaved. Sweat slicked her brow. But she stood straight, the staff steady in her hands. Kaelin's eyes held hers for a long moment, unreadable. Then he turned to his men. Remember this. Strength wears many skins. Dismiss her at your peril. He strode away, leaving Elowen with trembling arms and a heart that beat too fast. That night, she collapsed onto her pallet, bruises blooming across her arms. Pain licked her every limb, but her wolf hummed with pride. For the first time, the fortress had seen her stand. But the pit's breath whispered still, curling beneath her skin. And she knew with dreadful certainty. The deeper battle had only just begun. The night after Kaelin's trial in the courtyard, Elowen dreamed of roots. They coiled from the stone floor, black and slick, winding around her wrists and throat. They dragged her downward into endless dark where voices whispered in Thornmere's chant. Red eyes, red eyes, red eyes. Until the words unraveled into laughter sharp enough to cut. She woke with a cry, sweat chilling her skin, the tether still humming like a string plucked beneath the mountain. Sleep offered no refuge now. By dawn, Kaelin summoned her again to the hall. The 6 sisters lay pale but steadier than before, their breaths stronger under Elowen's herbs. The Sunspire's leaves shimmered faintly, no longer dulled to gray but tinged with hesitant gold. Hope, fragile, dangerous, stirred in the courtier's eyes. But the tribunal would not yield. She feeds the curse as much as she feeds the cure, one elder hissed. See how the tree bends toward her touch. See how its light dims when she enters. Elowen forced herself to stand tall, though her knees trembled. It dims because it is bound. What you fear is not me, but the truth that the pit beneath your fortress breathes the same hunger. Gasps echoed. The tribunal erupted in protests, their robes rustling like furious wings. Kaelin's voice fell like a hammer. Enough. If there is breath beneath this fortress, we will face it, not smother it with denial. His gaze slid to Elowen. You spoke of following the tether. Then you will lead us again. Her mouth went dry. To enter the cavern once more was to place her soul in a wolf's jaws, but to refuse was death swifter than any shadow. She bowed her head. I will go. They descended at dusk, torches guttering in the narrow stair. This time Kaelin brought not only guards but 2 tribunal elders, their mouths tight with disapproval yet unable to defy his command. Lady Mareth walked in silence, her eyes unreadable, her fingers brushing runes stitched into her robe as if warding off unseen teeth. Elowen felt the tether thrum louder with each step. Her wolf bristled, restless, warning. When the sealed archway fell open again, the rush of air reeked sharper, metallic and acrid, like blood left too long on stone. They entered the cavern. The pit yawned at its center, whispering in pulses like a vast lung. This time, the sound was not only a growl but words, thin, distorted, in a tongue Elowen almost understood. Her wolf pressed against her skin, ears flat, teeth bared. Kaelin stood at the edge, his sword drawn, his stance unflinching. What binds them lies here, he said. His voice carried not question but command. Find it. Elowen's hands shook as she knelt. She spread wolfsbane in a ring, her fingers trembling with cold sweat. She pressed her palm to the stone, and the tether surged. Her mind plunged. She was falling, dragged into shadow. Roots coiled around her ankles, yanking her downward. The pit opened like a mouth, and through it she saw the sisters dancing, not in the hall, but in endless black corridors. Their feet bled against unseen floors. Their eyes were vacant, their bodies moved by strings. Something pulled the strings. A figure cloaked in smoke, its face shifting between wolf and man and something inhuman. Its hands were claws and shackles both. Around its throat burned a mark she had seen once before, on Morgana's hand, the night the milk soured in her cup. Elowen screamed soundlessly. The vision broke. She staggered back, gasping, her palms bleeding where stone had bitten. Kaelin caught her before she fell. "What did you see?" Her voice rasped. "A shadow, a figure. Not the curse itself, but the hand behind it. Someone gave it shape. Someone tied your sisters to it." The tribunal hissed, recoiling as if her words burned. One elder spat. "Lies. She plants these visions to sow discord." Kaelin's gaze snapped to him. "Then why does my sister's breath strengthen when she returns from these visions?" The hall of stone quivered with silence. Elowen pressed on, though her throat was raw. "This is no wild curse. It was woven, crafted. Someone wanted them bound. And that someone still feeds it." The words hung heavy, impossible to recall. The return to the upper halls was tense. Guards marched stiffly, eyes darting as if shadows trailed them. The tribunal muttered like thunder behind closed doors. Meritha's silence grew sharper, her gaze lingering on Elowen longer each day. Kaelin summoned her privately to the eastern balcony. The wind knifed through the high stone, carrying the scent of pine and frost. Below, the mountains stretched in ridges sharp as blades. "You speak of hands behind shadows," he said, his voice low. "Then speak plainly. Who?" Elowen's chest tightened. To accuse without proof was folly. Yet silence was worse. "I saw a mark, cruel. The same I once saw on the hand of my stepmother." Kaelin's brows furrowed. "Morgana of Thornmere." "Yes." Her voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "If she is bound to this, then my exile was not rejection alone. It was preparation. She cursed me to weaken me, and cursed your sisters to weaken you." His eyes darkened, a storm gathering. "If this is true, she has declared war upon my bloodline." Elowen swallowed. "If it is true, she will not stop until the Sunspire falls." Silence stretched between them, raw and heavy. For the first time, Kaelin's gaze softened, not with warmth, but with the weight of recognition. He saw not only an outcast but a survivor of the same shadow. "You will not stand against this alone," he said. The words struck her chest like a spark on tinder. 4 years she had carried everything alone. Thornmere's scorn, Morgana's curse, her own wolf's restless ache. To hear those words from the Alpha himself was a wound and a balm at once. She bowed her head, hiding the tremor in her lips. "Then I will not fail." That night, Elowen returned to her chamber. The guard at her door was gone. Inside, her herbs were scattered once more, her cloak cut again. But this time something new awaited. A scrap of parchment, weighted by a stone. On it, in soot-black script, "You dig too deep. Shadows will bury you." Her wolf bristled, her heart pounding. The hand behind the curse was closer than she feared, not only in Morgana's halls, but perhaps within Blackspire itself. She crushed the parchment in her fist. Fear clawed at her throat. But beneath it burned something fiercer. Resolve. If shadows sought to bury her, she would make the mountain remember her name. The fortress seemed to change after the pit was unsealed. The stones themselves breathed heavier, as though the mountain had inhaled too deeply and now held its breath, waiting. Servants scurried faster, guards gripped their hilts tighter, and whispers followed Elowen like wolves in fog. Each dawn she returned to the hall of the eternal flame. The sisters lay pale but steadier than weeks before. The youngest could now sit propped on cushions, her eyes fluttering with the fragile awareness of a child half-woken from a nightmare. The eldest stirred once, whispering Kaelin's name before sinking again into silence. The Sunspire mirrored them. Its leaves, once dulled, flickered gold at the edges, only to sag back into shadow by nightfall. Every improvement was answered with relapse, as if the tree itself struggled against chains invisible to all but Elowen. She worked without rest. Herbs stained her hands green, and sleep deserted her eyes. Each tether she touched fought harder now, thrashing like a beast aware of its leash. Her wolf rose to meet it, teeth bared in her chest. Yet each battle left her weaker. The tribunal grew bold in their suspicion. On the 5th morning after the descent into the cavern, the elders gathered in the hall, their robes heavy with sigils. Their voices cut through the air like blades. "This charade must end," spat Elder Tereth, his eyes sharp as flint. "The Alpha's mercy has gone too far. Look at the tree, still waning. Look at the girls, still chained to shadows. Every day she lingers, the curse grows fatter." Murmurs of agreement rose among the tribunal. Elowen bowed her head, though rage burned hot in her veins. "If the curse swells, it is because it resists being cut. You know this. You feel it as much as I do." Tereth sneered. "I feel only deceit in your tongue. You speak as though shadows confide in you, witch." Kaelin, seated on his throne, rose slowly. His presence pressed the air flat, silencing all but the torch crackle. "Enough." His gaze swept the tribunal, cold and final. "She has done more for my sisters in weeks than you in months of prayers and potions. Until I command otherwise, her hand remains upon them. Question it again, and you question me." The tribunal fell into sullen silence, but their eyes smoldered. Elowen's chest eased with the smallest breath. Yet she saw the cost in Kaelin's stance, the way his jaw tightened, the way even his allies within the tribunal shifted uneasily. Each defense he gave her cut deeper divides in his court. That evening, Elowen returned to her chamber to find the guard outside her door lying unconscious, a welt rising on his temple. Her heart lurched. She burst inside. Her herbs were scattered, her palette overturned, her water jug smashed. On the wall, written in crimson dye, a single phrase: "Leave or burn." Her wolf snarled inside her chest, demanding to hunt. But the truth pressed colder. The enemy was not shadows beneath the mountain alone. The hand that wrote this had walked Blackspire's halls. The next day, Kaelin summoned her privately. They met not in the hall, but in the training courtyard where frost still clung to the stones. He stood bare-armed, his sword sheathed, his breath steaming in the chill. "You were attacked," he said flatly. Elowen nodded. "Not shadows. Not the curse. Flesh and blood." Kaelin's eyes hardened. "Then the rot festers inside these walls." He studied her for a long silence, then asked, "Why do you stay, knowing even my halls conspire against you?" Elowen's throat ached with the weight of truth. "Because if I flee, the curse wins. And because your sister's breaths have become the measure of my own." For a heartbeat, Kaelin's gaze softened. Then it steeled again, testing her resolve. "Words are wind. Prove it. Tomorrow you will face the tribunal directly. They demand judgment." Her stomach dropped. "Judgment? They claim your work feeds the curse. They demand trial by ordeal. Survive it, and your worth stands beyond question. Fail and—" He did not finish. He did not need to. Elowen's heart hammered, but her wolf lifted its head, teeth gleaming in her blood. "Then I will not fail." The trial came with dawn. The courtyard filled with warriors, servants, tribunal elders, and courtiers alike. At its center stood a brazier roaring with flame. By it, a circle had been marked with salt and ash. Lady Mareth announced the terms. By the tribunal's will, the accused will step into the circle and lay her hand upon the flame. If she is curse-born, the fire will consume her. If she speaks truth, she will endure. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Even among the tribunal, some looked pale with doubt. Kaelin stood apart, arms folded, eyes unreadable. Elowen stepped forward. The wolf inside her snarled, but she calmed it with a steady breath. She pulled back her sleeve and placed her palm above the brazier. Heat licked her skin, cruel and eager. "Now," Marith intoned, "let the fire speak." Elowen pressed her hand into the flame. Pain seared instantly, biting deep, burning flesh and bone. She clenched her teeth, refusing to cry out. The tribunal leaned forward, hungry for her scream. But the fire did not consume. Instead it flickered, first red, then gold, then green, wrapping her hand in light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The crowd gasped. The tribunal recoiled. Elowen held it until her knees shook, until her wolf howled in her chest. Then she withdrew, her palm blistered but whole, the light fading like embers. Silence swallowed the courtyard. Kaelin's voice broke it, ringing like a bell. "The fire has spoken. She is not curse-born. She is chosen." Shouts rose. Some in protest, some in awe. The tribunal hissed, their power cracked but not broken. Elowen's vision swam. Her palm throbbed with pain, yet her heart blazed hotter. For the first time since Thornmere, she had not only survived judgment, she had overturned it. Kaelin's gaze met hers across the courtyard. No softness now, no mask. Only a promise. "You are not done yet." And in the pit of her chest, Elowen answered silently. "Neither are you." The courtyard's echo of Elowen's ordeal had barely faded when the fortress itself seemed to shudder. The brazier's last embers flickered out, the salt lines scattered by a sudden gust of wind that smelled faintly of iron. Warriors muttered prayers under their breath. The tribunal tightened their robes as though fabric could shield them from what they had just witnessed. Elowen's palm throbbed, the blistered skin wrapped in linen by a hurried healer. Yet beneath the pain hummed something stranger, a warmth not her own, a quiet ember lodged deep within her bones. The fire had not consumed her. It had marked her. Kaelin dismissed the assembly with a voice that brooked no delay. "Return to your posts. Let whispers spread if they must. The fire has spoken." But whispers were not all that spread. That night, as torchlight guttered in the halls, a scream split the keep. Elowen ran with others toward the hall of the eternal flame. The sight struck her breathless. One of Kaelin's sisters convulsed on her pallet, her body racked by spasms so violent it took 2 guards to hold her down. Her eyes rolled back, lips frothing with foam. The sunspire above her shivered, its leaves dropping one by one like dying stars. The tribunal surged forward, voices shrill with accusation. "This is her doing. The witch angered the fire and now the curse feeds." Elowen pushed past them, falling to her knees beside the girl. "No, this is retaliation. The curse strikes back because it was wounded." Kaelin's voice cut through the chaos. "Silence. Give her room." His command held, though barely. The tribunal seethed, their fury simmering just beyond reach. Elowen ignored them, crushing moonfern between her palms and pressing the juice to the girl's lips. She whispered the old lullabies again, her voice ragged, her wolf pressing hard against her ribs. The convulsions slowed, then stilled. The girl slumped, her breath shallow but steady. The sunspire ceased its shivering, though its branches sagged with exhaustion. Elowen sagged too, sweat soaking her hairline. The tether she felt thrummed more violently than ever, snapping like a wounded beast tugging at its chain. Somewhere beneath the fortress, the pit growled in answer. When dawn came, Blackspire's air was thick with unrest. Servants whispered of omens, guards clutched charms, and the tribunal convened in shadowed corners. Elowen knew the balance had tipped. Her survival of the trial had cracked their authority, but the curse's retaliation gave them new weapons to wield. Kaelin summoned her privately again, this time to the war chamber. Maps sprawled across the table, candles guttering in the draught. He stood with arms braced on the wood, his shoulders taut, his jaw carved of stone. "You saved her," he said without looking up. "But the curse grows bolder. Elowen swallowed. It knows we're close. The trial wounded it. My vision showed a hand behind it, Alpha, someone feeding it still. If we don't sever that hand, the pit will drag everything under. Finally he lifted his gaze. The weight of it pinned her where she stood. And you believe that hand is Morgana of Thornmere? Elowen's throat tightened. I saw her mark. Cannot be certain, but yes, I believe she bound it. She has reason to destroy me, to weaken you, to claim power neither of us could resist. Kaelin's silence was more dangerous than anger. At last he said, if this is true, then the threat is not only shadow but blood. A wolf of Thornmere has dared strike at Blackspire. Elowen's chest constricted. She will come again. She always does. For the first time, Kaelin's expression cracked. Not weakness, but fury contained so tightly it burned hotter than release. Then let her come. But we will be ready. The fortress shifted in the days that followed. Guards doubled their patrols. Wolves trained until their breaths fogged the winter air in clouds. The tribunal spread venom in whispers, but even among their number, cracks appeared. Elders divided between fear of Elowen and fear of the curse itself. Elowen continued her work with the sisters. Their strength wavered but held. Each night she pressed closer to the tether, tracing its threads, feeling its roots writhe deeper into the pit. Each time, her wolf flinched from the taste of it. Metal and ash, hatred spun into rope. And each night, someone tried to drive her out. Herbs scattered. Doors rattled. Once, her meal brought to her chamber reeked faintly of bitter almond. She left it untouched. The betrayal was no longer rumor. It had teeth inside the fortress walls. On the 7th night after the trial, the curse struck again. Elowen was in her chamber when the sound came, a low, bone-deep vibration that rattled the stone itself. She stumbled to her feet as torches outside guttered out one by one. The air thickened, heavy with the same metallic tang as the cavern. Screams echoed down the hall. She flung her door open. Shadows writhed along the walls, stretching long and sharp, though no flame cast them. Warriors clashed with phantoms that bled into smoke when struck. Her wolf surged, teeth bared inside her chest. She sprinted toward the hall, her feet pounding the stones. Inside chaos reigned. The sisters writhed on their pallets, the Sunspire's light dimming to a sickly gray. Tribunal elders cowered against the walls, their prayers shrill and useless. Guards fought the shadows, but their blades cut only air. Kaelin stood at the tree's base, his sword blazing with fire from the brazier, his eyes like stormlight. He struck at the shadows with fury, but they multiplied faster than they fell. Elowen, he roared above the din. She skidded to his side, lungs burning. It's the tether, they're pushing through it. We have to hold them back, or it will swallow everything. Then hold, Kaelin growled. They fought together. Elowen scattered herbs into the air. Chanting lullabies turned into battle songs. The smoke curled green gold, burning holes in the shadows. Kaelin's sword blazed, each strike cleaving phantoms in two. They moved almost as one, Alpha and Outcast, strength and will braided together. But the tether screamed louder. The pit below yawned wider. Through the haze, Elowen saw it again, the cloaked figure with shifting face, its claws tugging the sister's strings. Its laughter scraped across her bones. She screamed, pressing both palms to the floor. Power surged, wild and raw, her wolf pouring through her veins. The herbs flared bright as stars. The tether recoiled, snapping taut with a shriek that rattled the hall. And then silence. The shadows collapsed. The sisters slumped, breathing ragged but alive. The Sunspire shivered, then glowed faintly gold again. Elowen collapsed to her knees, her chest heaving, her palms raw with burns. Kaelin's hand closed around her shoulder, steadying her. His grip was fierce, grounding. his voice low enough only she heard. "You do not stand alone," he said. Her throat closed, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. For the first time she saw no doubt there. No suspicion. Only a fierce, dangerous trust. And beneath it something more. When the tribunal crept from their corners, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear, Kaelan turned to them. His voice was thunder. "You see her strength. You see her worth. And you will remember it." They bowed stiffly, but Elowen saw the fury twisting behind their silence. They had lost ground tonight, but they had not surrendered. As the hall emptied, Elowen whispered to Kaelan, "They will not forgive this." "They don't need to," he said, his hand lingering at her arm a moment longer than duty required. "They only need to fear it." That night, when Elowen finally returned to her chamber, another scrap of parchment awaited her, pinned by a dagger to her table. In soot-black letters it read, "The pit is not your enemy. The enemy shares your roof." Her wolf growled low, furious. Her hand trembled as she pulled the parchment free. Whoever fed the curse had walked these halls tonight. And they would strike again. Morning came gray and bitter, but the keep of Blackspire did not rest. The shadow attacks still lingered in every whisper. Guards stalked the halls with blades drawn, eyes twitching at every flicker of torchlight. Servants hurried with heads bowed, refusing to meet Elowen's gaze. The sisters slept, pale but alive. The Sunspire stood weary above them, its branches trembling with a strange anticipation, as if waiting for the next strike. Elowen's body ached as if she had fought not shadows but stone itself. Her palms were raw, her throat scraped from chanting. Yet worse than pain was the gnawing in her chest. The tether's hum had grown sharper, vibrating like a blade against whetstone. Whatever lay below the mountain did not retreat. It gathered. Kaelan summoned her before the sun fully rose. The war chamber was empty save for him. He stood by the map-strewn table, the windows open to a wind that knifed through the room. His sword lay across the maps, glinting faintly in the pale light. "You held them last night," he said, his voice low, controlled. "But it will not be the last strike." Elowen nodded. "The tether fights harder each time I weaken it. If the pit snaps its leash fully, the shadows won't stop at the hall. They'll swallow the fortress, the highlands, everything." Kaelan's eyes were storms barely contained. "Then we find who feeds it. The parchment you received proves the hand guiding this is here, within these walls." Her wolf bristled in her chest. "A traitor." "Yes," Kaelan said. "And traitors do not hide long when wolves hunt." The hunt began quietly. Kaelan doubled patrols, assigning warriors he trusted most to shadow the tribunal. He ordered the kitchens watched, the armories sealed, even the parchment supplies counted. Elowen moved through the keep with new eyes. Every servant's glance, every guard's silence, every whisper in the corners prickled her senses. The tribunal elders clustered together like crows, their robes trailing shadows too long for comfort. Some scowled openly at her presence. Others masked their faces, which unsettled her more. Lady Meredith alone kept her silence balanced between sharpness and something like thought. She watched Elowen with a gaze that seemed to weigh, not condemn. But even that was no comfort. Each night, Elowen tended the sisters, herbs staining her fingers darker, lullabies cracking her throat raw. Each night, she pressed against the tether, tracing its roots in the pit. Each night, it thrashed harder, the cloaked figure grinning wider in her visions. Once, she woke from a trance with blood dripping from her nose and the youngest sister clutching her wrist with trembling fingers. "Don't leave," the girl whispered weakly. "It pulls when you leave." Elowen's heart broke. She stroked the girl's hair, whispering, "I won't." But the truth roared inside her. She could not promise that. Not yet. The tribunal struck back, not with claws but with politics. At a council gathering, Elder Tereth raised his voice. The Alpha endangers us all by letting the witch linger. Every shadow she summons tears at the fortress's heart. The highlands murmur already. Villages whisper that Blackspire houses a cursed outcast. Will you risk rebellion, Alpha, for one woman's trickery? Murmurs rippled. Kaelin's hand clenched the arm of his throne until the wood groaned. The highlands will have strength, he said, and strength is what she gives my sisters. She gives spectacle, Tereth spat. Nothing more. Elowen rose before she could stop herself. If you fear whispers, Elder, perhaps you should ask why your prayers have yielded only silence while mine bought breath. Gasps filled the hall. Tribunal robes rustled like agitated wings. Kaelin's lips twitched, not in humor, but in the faintest flicker of approval. The council dissolved in fury, but Elowen felt the shift. She had spoken in open defiance, and Kaelin had not silenced her. That silence was its own protection. Later, he summoned her to the balcony overlooking the training grounds. The night air bit with frost, torches below painting the courtyard gold. Warriors drilled even under stars, their blades flashing in rhythm. You spoke boldly, Kaelin said. His arms were folded, his gaze fixed on the wolves sparring below. Would you rather I had bowed? Elowen asked quietly. His eyes slid to hers, sharp, assessing. No. But boldness paints targets. I already bear one, she said. His silence stretched, heavy but not cruel. At last he asked, do you regret it? Stepping into this fight that should never have been yours. Her throat tightened. She thought of Thornmere, of Morgana's smile, of years of exile spent wishing she were invisible. Then she thought of the sisters whispering, thank you, of the Sunspire's leaves glowing faint gold, of Kaelin's hand steadying hers in the Hall of Shadows. No, she said. For once, I am exactly where I must be. For the first time, something eased in Kaelin's stance. Not softness, not yet, but trust, dangerous and real. Then we stand together, he said. And for the first time she believed him. That belief was tested before dawn. A guard burst into Elowen's chamber, blood streaking his temple. The eldest sister, he gasped. She vanished from her pallet. Elowen's blood ran cold. She sprinted through corridors slick with frost, her wolf howling inside her chest. In the hall, chaos reigned. The girl's bed was empty, the sheets tangled as if she had been dragged. The Sunspire's branches shook violently, leaves falling like dying embers. Kaelin strode in, fury carved into every line of him. Search the keep. Seal the gates. No one enters or leaves until she is found. Elowen pressed her hand to the stone floor. The tether snapped against her skin, pulling her downward. She gasped. The pit. They've taken her below. The tribunal erupted in protests, voices shrill with denial. Impossible. The archway is sealed. Kaelin turned on them, his eyes ablaze. Then the traitor among us opened it. The words landed like a thunderclap. Silence followed, heavy with fear. Elowen rose, her voice steady despite the tremor in her bones. If we do not follow now, she will not return. The tether feeds too quickly. Kaelin's hand fell to his sword. His gaze met hers, steel to fire. Then we hunt into the dark. They gathered a warband. Kaelin, Elowen, Lady Merith, and a handful of his fiercest guards. Torches lit the way, their flames straining against the cold draft rising from below. As they descended into the cavern again, the pit's breath thundered louder than ever. Shadows licked the walls and whispers slithered through the air, voices mimicking Elowen's own, Kaelin's, even the sisters. Come closer. Give in. Join us. The guards faltered. One stumbled, clutching his ears. Kaelin barked them steady, his presence cutting through the dark like a blade. Elowen pressed forward, her wolf snarling, her herbs clutched in her fists. The tether yanked hard, dragging her toward the pit's edge. She nearly stumbled, but Kaelin's hand caught her elbow, steadying her. "Stand," he said again as he had the first time. She stood. At the pit's edge, the whispers rose to screams. The figure in her vision stirred, its shape looming larger, its face twisting between wolf, man, and nightmare. And in its claws, it held the eldest sister, her eyes vacant, her limbs dancing like a puppet's. Elowen's scream tore from her throat. The time for whispers was over. The descent felt endless. The deeper they went, the heavier the air pressed, until each breath burned like ash. The torch flames shrank to thin blue tongues, reluctant to burn. The warrior's boots echoed too loudly, swallowed too quickly, as if the stone itself wanted to devour sound. At last, the cavern widened. The pit gaped before them, a black wound in the mountain's belly. Its edges shimmered faintly with light not born of fire but of something older, sickly green veins crawling like rot through the stone. The eldest sister stood at its brink, her feet bare, her eyes vacant, her arms outstretched toward the abyss. And beside her, the cloaked figure. It loomed taller than memory, its edges shifting like smoke, its face never still. Wolf, woman, child, elder. Each visage flickered like a candle flame, gone before the eye could pin it. In its clawed hand hung chains of shadow binding the girl. The guards faltered, muttering prayers. One dropped his torch, the flame sputtering out on the damp stone. Kaelin stepped forward, his sword flashing in what little light remained. "Release her." His voice carried iron that brooked no refusal. The figure laughed. The sound scraped across the stone like rusted metal. "You command shadows as if they bow to crowns. Foolish king. I serve a greater hand." Elowen's wolf surged, her skin crawling with recognition. She had felt this presence in dreams, in visions, in every lash of the tether. And now, in the shifting faces, one shape lingered longer than the rest. A woman with eyes cold as frost, lips curved in the smile of a predator who never wasted hunger. Morgana. Her breath caught. The figure blurred again, but the echo of her stepmother's visage clung like rot. "Elowen," it whispered in her voice, mockery dripping like poison. "Little reject. Did you think you could run from the hand that shaped you?" Elowen's knees wavered, but Kaelin's presence steadied her. His hand brushed her shoulder briefly, a touch more command than comfort. "Stand." She stood. The figure raised its clawed hand, and the eldest sister jerked like a puppet on strings. Her feet carried her closer to the pit's edge. One more step, and she would fall into the abyss. Elowen darted forward, chanting under her breath, scattering herbs from her satchel. Smoke curled green and silver, tangling with the shadow chains. The tether screamed, recoiling as if burned. The figure hissed, "Clever witch, but not clever enough." Shadows surged from the pit, coiling like serpents. The guards slashed, but their blades passed through air. One man was caught, dragged screaming toward the abyss until Kaelin's sword struck, the flame along its edge severing the tendrils. The shadow shrieked and vanished. Kaelin's eyes blazed. "You will not have them," he growled, voice ringing through the cavern. "Not my blood. Not my highlands." The figure only laughed, the sound fracturing into a chorus of voices, some familiar, some not. "You cannot fight what binds you. She knows it, your little outcast knows. Every step she takes tightens the knot." Elowen clenched her fists. Her wolf pressed harder than ever, demanding release. She dropped to her knees, slamming her palms to the stone. The herbs in her pouch flared white-hot, burning with a brilliance that carved through shadow. The tether shrieked louder, trying to wrench free. The eldest sister collapsed, her chains weakening. Elowen's lungs burned, her veins felt aflame, but she held. Kaelin leapt to her side. his sword flashing in arcs of fire, cutting down shadows as they lunged. His voice thundered above the din. "You are not alone in this fight." And for the first time she believed it fully. The figure drew back, shadows swirling around it like a cloak. Its face flickered again, settling for a heartbeat too long on Morgana's. Cold eyes bored into Elowen's. "You will break," it whispered. "As your mother did." "As you will." Rage surged. Elowen screamed, her wolf howling through her throat. Light burst from her hands, lashing across the cavern. The figure staggered, its form unraveling at the edges. The tether snapped taut, then loosened, just enough for the eldest sister to collapse into Kaelin's arms. The cavern shook. Stones cracked, dust raining from the ceiling. The pit roared, furious at being denied. The figure dissolved into smoke, its laughter fading but not gone. "We are not finished, little wolf. Shadows always return." And then it was gone. Silence crashed down. The guards gasped, clutching each other. Kaelin cradled his sister, his face hard but his eyes burning with relief. He lifted her gently, nodding once to Elowen. "You pulled her back," he said, voice raw with truth. "You pulled us back." Elowen sagged to the floor, her chest heaving, her palms blistered anew. "Not enough. It will return. Stronger. Fed by whoever serves it here." Kaelin's gaze sharpened. "Then we hunt the traitor. No matter whose robes they wear. No matter what blood they claim." Elowen met his eyes, exhausted but unbroken. The bond between them flared. Not just need, not just duty, but trust forged in the darkest place the mountain held. And in her chest, her wolf whispered a vow. "If shadows return, so will we."